ICICI has one of its core DNA as technologies. We have started using technology to resolve certain constraints because we are one of the banks which came in much later in the period and regulation did not allow us to open enough branches. And so tech is a core part of our DNA, whether we talk about ATMs, whether we talk about core banking, whether we talk about internet banking, all these drove our numbers and volumes in a very big way. So we have constantly been challenging and reorienting processes by using technologies. While we use technology, we still felt that there is enough more scope, multiple handoffs, multiple players, which can be brought into tech in a big way. So while we are working on the efficiency, we believe blockchain as the next stage sunrise technology is ripe enough for a platform like trade. And that is where this vision of using technology not just as an enabler, but actually bringing tech to the core of your business operation seems to be extremely apt and fitting very well with the blockchain as a concept, or at least an adaptation of the distributed ledger, and use it to solve a core persistent problem which is a part of the trade processes today. And in a trade, there are multiple partners involved and the process itself is extremely cumbersome. If I had to give an illustration, if one of our customers needs to do a trade transaction, then he needs to do the processes which are well within our bank, which involves a lot of documentation, multiple compliance procedures, maker-checker processes within our own bank, and then finally the same process gets repeated with the counterparty, whether it be with the other bank, his own. So all this typically would use to take a huge amount of time for a transaction to consume, number one. Number two, there was this huge problem about duplicate invoices, and therefore a probability of a fraud happening when it comes to an LC or a BG. So each one of these pain points were first and foremost precipitated and articulated. And we felt that blockchain, or rather the technology underlying the blockchain, is a good platform to solve some of these issues. And that is where the thought process occurred. One, there is a very core pain point which is getting resolved. This particular model or the technology is very easily scalable without any other complications. And third, if you had to build it in a much more ecosystem platform manner, wherein you're not working in competition but actually in collaboration with the other banks, then it is actually sustainable. All these three is what drove to this vision of not doing it on a solo basis, but actually coming together, bring together like-minded banking partners and build what we would call as a trade connect, which facilitates interoperable domestic trade to begin with, and then hopefully take it on an international level. First and foremost, the turnaround time. A typical process which used to take, let us say, a period of X days is happening at 1/3 or 1/4 of that same time. Number two, the mistakes that you can technically happen, because it's very, very compliance driven. Trade is a very compliance, rule-based kind of processes. So the probability of error by your employees is going down. Third, fraud is a very common area. In fact, one of the reasons why there are so many checks and balances is because of the possibility of the fraud. Duplicate invoicing, under invoicing, not having corresponding LR receipts, ability to coordinate the documents, all this gets eliminated because you're having one source of truth. The buyer, the seller, the buyer bank and the seller bank. So effectively all of them are coming onto one connect and are able to transparently see all this. So let me put it in a different way. So number one, the fact that transactions are happening simultaneously, your visibility of all the documentation that is required, and the actual movement of inventory so that the invoice is coordinated with the inventory. All this is tracked, all the three kinds of information are tracked simultaneously. The business model in blockchain, given the immutability, given the fact that it is instantaneous, and given the fact that the records can be kept at any point of time and the compatibility is much higher, these are the innovations which should, scalability itself is going to be a mega innovation. So multiple banks coming in, following similar protocols and doing trade much more strongly is a big play. There are good use cases for on an internal basis, like internal reconciliation across our multiple branches in various geographies. I'm not talking domestic, but say international transactions. Is there a possibility that if you could put some of these ledgers on a blockchain so that the big pain, which is usually a reconciliation of each one of these on a daily basis or on a quarterly basis, will get eliminated? But this is something which we're experimenting in, will help reduction of bureaucracy and much greater accuracy of records within the bank. That's on an internal case. So government is another area. whether it be land records, whether it be vehicle records. So as the governments are taking initiative, we want to be aligned and be ready to take use of these blockchain initiatives as they come along. So it's all the three: commercial marketplaces, internal efficiency trackers, as well as public sector / government interfaces. A corporate which today typically takes anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks for a normal transaction to happen, because of the compliance issues, the operational risks, and the various other aspects, will see the biggest benefit. So their ability from a technical perspective, moving away from a 3-week TAT to a 20-minute TAT or a half an hour TAT is a no-brainer. So that pain is very amplified. When we last did a count, we have 280 corporates who have signed up. What I mean by sign up is they are parallelly working on our old trade platform, as well as they have signed up for the new blockchain platform. So the intent is to bring more and more nodes, more and more banks into play, more and more customers into play, which effectively facilitates, and that's where corporates will give the biggest. So that is what I call adoption. More than adoption, a greater amount of activation and usage of the business. Trade means interoperability. Trade means connect with multiple banks, because we cannot dictate who banks with whom. So trade is effectively bringing different parties, different banks together. And I think blockchain is able to facilitate that. If you are able to add more and more banks, every bank which adds into it is a node, which is its own network. And if all of us are talking in a similar language and become into a part, our ability to interoperate between each of our systems without actually sharing any of our private or our personal data, but standing guarantee and trust to our respective customers is a big story. So that's one level of interoperability. The second level of interoperability is if within a country, if a network gets created, let's say the Trade Connect network, and tomorrow if a similar network needs to interact with an international trade transaction either in the UAE or the GCC countries or in APAC, or for that matter any other part of the geography, will the technology be able to seamlessly be interoperate with any other technology or any other such a consortium is also an integral element. So while we are designing the architecture, designing it collectively with all the members, along with the tech partners, along with the messaging partners, will play a very critical role. Blockchain on a standalone basis does not have dramatic value. It is either a public utility, such as a land record which you are able to access, and therefore there is a single source of truth, or pick up a project either like a remittance or a trade, which is effectively solving a very severe pain point which has all aspects, both the financial transaction, the physical paperwork around it. So if you're able to combine some of these and you're able to cut across processes, multiple hops in a process and bring it in one shot, that is the best use. And from a tech perspective, it always makes sense to go with an established player. Because what we're realizing is when we are going into an open system, while we're able to crack it, our ability to scale up and our ability to build it as per our needs is becoming difficult. And especially trying to detach what bitcoins and blockchain have become very popular for, and working on the underlying technology is a big story. Finacle is our underlying core banking platform. So for us, it was a choice. One of the enigmatic things about blockchain is the final word has not yet been said. We don't know which technology is going to come up fast, which one is going to trump up. But our experience with both Infosys has been that they have been supporting our core banking very closely. They own the product, they understand it. And trade and core banking are usually very connected with each other. To that extent, it is much simpler. We have this ability of building APIs between the core platform and these various evolving platforms. So these are some of the positive elements. Like I told you, I think irrespective of whichever platform you choose, the need for seamlessly integrating with your core banking solution and at the same time have the ability to talk to both existing and evolving new technologies is very critical. And I think Infosys being a larger player should be able to play a good role.